My name is Debbie Davidson, and I am with the Math Science Nucleus. I don't know if any of you have ever gone to the Nucleus operates the Children's Natural History Museum there in Fremont. It's got all kinds of cool science stuff. It's open Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Check our calendar if you need to. All right, and we also operate Tule ponds at Tyson's Lagoons. Some of you may go there for some field trips coming up. But we've got a lot of activities going on. But today, this is just for you second graders. We're going to be soaring into science with Mattos Elementary, and we're going to be talking about your long-term project. You are going to be studying plants, growth, and pollination. Let me see. Are you guys okay? I see one teacher's, hold on a second. I see one person's over here that's looking like they got an issue. Are you guys okay? Here you go. I hear you now. Are you okay? If you need to open your video, open your mic, you can. Oh, let me see if I can get him. Make sure he's good. I was trying to get him to see if he's okay. Okay, maybe they're good. All right, we'll go ahead and get going then. All right, so our long-term project, you are going to track a few things all year, and at the end of the year, we'll be able to make some conclusions based on what we find. Now, today we're going to be talking about all different kinds of plants and the animals that use them. So our plants, again, are important to all of our living organisms. You see this person here that's watering their plants. Does anybody out there have any gardens or flowers that you guys have to water? We might have to water some of our plants there at the school. We'll talk about that in a minute. But all of these plants, we're going to talk about how they have roots and shoot systems, and that the plants can grow as long as they have light and water and nutrients. Now, pollination is another thing that you will hear, and that's important for certain plants in order for them to be able to grow and to create new seeds. Now, we are going to learn about collecting data. Now, you can say it data or data. There's no wrong or right way to say it. I usually say data. So we're going to collect our data on how we're growing our milkweed. The milkweed is what we want to plant because it grows pretty straight, so hopefully it'll be easy to measure. And we're going to see if that milkweed grows, how it's affected by the different seasons, and see if we can attract any wildlife to our garden, our school garden. All right, now our plant concepts. Now look at this little creature, little rabbit guy swinging on the swing of a big, giant, strong tree. So some of our plants are very tall and they've got strong limbs that can hold swings like this. And you can climb some of those trees, but not all trees have those strong limbs. Some of them break very easily. We're going to learn about the different kinds of plants, big plants like our trees and our shrubs, but also small little plants. Look at those little dots of green on the right. Those little dots, those are a plant. That is algae. Can you guys say algae? Algae. Okay, so the algae is a little tiny green plant that lives in the water, always has to be in the water. So it's not real big and strong because it's in that water. But all of these plants, big or small, they all produce oxygen, and we need the oxygen to breathe, right? So these plants are very important to us as well as a lot of these plants do provide food for us as well as other animals. So these are kind of the general ideas that we're going to be learning about. Now look at this funny picture. What is a plant? Now this funny picture shows a big tall tree kind of moving around, dancing. Now our trees do sometimes look like they're dancing if it's super windy. Look at those little flowers. Can our little flowers pick up their roots out of the ground and dance around the tree? Not exactly. Nope. Their roots, they are stuck in the ground. They can't walk around. And that's something that's kind of interesting because the plants can't move. They do have to be able to adapt to their environment that's right around them. Now, if you look at all those plant leaves, put your fingers up like this. What a plant does with these leaves is they collect the sunshine and they make food in those leaves. That's pretty amazing. So they're able to capture the sunlight, make food in their leaves, then that food is sent down throughout the rest of the plant. That's pretty amazing. It's called photosynthesis. Can you guys say photosynthesis? Photosynthesis. All right. So again, lots of different types of trees, some big, some small, and they do require water and nutrients to grow. Now, today we are going to be talking about, mainly in the plant kingdom, these flowering plants. See that big iris that's opening up there? That plant is called an angiosperm. Now I have my little red pointer. This over here is the tree of life. So our plants that we're going to be studying are these angiosperms right here. But see, it could also be, we've got ferns, mushroom or fungi. We've got green algae, brown algae. Remember, we saw a picture of that green algae. Now on this tree of life, you are way over here. You are a mammal and you're in the Animalia kingdom. All right, but for our purpose, for our second grade project, we are going to be studying the plant kingdom and those angiosperms. All right, now parts of a land plant. We have everything above the ground. That's going to be called our shoot system. And everything, that shoot system is what uses that sunlight. Remember, the leaves are collecting the sunlight to make the food for the plant. Everything below ground, we're going to call our root system. And the roots are responsible for collecting up water and sending it up then to the leaves. And that water is also needed for that photosynthesis. Now, if you look on the different types of the parts of this flower that we have here, or the plant that we have here, roots, again, down in the bottom, under the ground, absorb the water and minerals. The stem that's in the middle, it's kind of like a harder, more structure to it. That supports the plant, holds it up. Then we have the red, probably a tomato, a little fruit. That's protecting the seeds. Of course, we have our leaves that are collecting sunshine for photosynthesis. And then those little yellow flowers, we need pollination. The pollen from the flowers has to get traveled around. Anywhere there's a flower that gets pollinated, it's going to turn into tomato. And again, that's the way that the plant can make more seeds. All right, now I want you guys to think a few minutes about these different kind of plants. Do you eat any plants? What about some of your favorite things that you eat? I wonder if they're plants. Any idea? So if you think about, look at this little funny picture. The roots, you might be eating carrots, potatoes, and onions. Those are all under the ground. Flowers, if you eat broccoli or cauliflower or cabbage, those are all flowers. We eat them before they actually flower. If we left them in the fields, they would then go to seed and flower. Nuts and seeds, corn, black beans, rice, cashews, all those things. Those are all nuts and seeds. The leaves, we've got lettuce, spinach, bok choy. Fruits, apples and oranges, tomatoes, melons, squash, honeydew. Now I said squash though, because sometimes we'll call those nutritionally, they're vegetables, but botanically, as far as plants go, they are still considered a fruit because they have the seeds hiding inside. Okay, so that's kind of a tricky, just to know what kind of science you're talking about. For our science, we're going to be talking the botany, and that's always going to be some fruits. Even bark. Has anybody had their maple syrup with pancakes? That's coming from the sap of a tree. Now, the stalks and stems, those are things like celery and asparagus. So for the next few days, I want you to pay attention and see if you can figure out what plants you eat at home. Now, this is my friend's little rabbit that's eating some spinach. Spinach is the leaf of a plant. And in the middle picture there, you can see how the spinach is growing in the ground. And we actually have to cut or just break off with our fingers those lettuce leaves. And you can see the little rabbit loves the leaves and the stems. They eat everything. Now, I like to eat spinach when it's mixed up in like a spinach dip or even steamed spinach up at the top. You're probably eating some spinach too. It's got lots of nutrients to it. It's good for us. Now, has anybody here ever tried an artichoke? Now, California is known for their artichokes. The very bottom picture shows you a big field full of artichokes to be harvested. Now, we harvest these just before they bloom. And if we left them on the stalks a little bit longer, there's two flowering plants at the top. That's what the artichoke that we eat, the part, would turn into the flower. And again, pollen would be it required for pollination for the plant to grow and make new seeds. But we harvest it right before it blooms. You can see us cooking it up over there. And it's pretty tasty. I like it in artichoke dip. But again, you're eating the part of a flower. Now, this funny picture, this is of a zucchini. If you look at the beginning of the flower, beginning, you see a yellow flower. So that yellow flower has to be pollinated. And again, where there's a flower, that's going to turn into fruit. And I got our zucchini. We slice open that zucchini. It's got all the seeds inside. And we like to cook it up and eat it. Okay, so again, the seeds are inside the fruit. Now, this doesn't grow overnight. It takes several weeks, actually a couple months, to grow and be able to get the flower and the fruit. All right, now the onion, sometimes you guys might eat some onions. Onions are a bulb. That means they grow down in the ground. Look at this on the left side. Oh, it's growing all wiggly. See how the roots were growing in the water? Look, those other two onions are starting to go now. Now those will even grow if they're just sitting out on your countertop too. You can still eat them after they've started doing that, but you can tell that they're growing well. Again, that's a time lapse. It's over a lot of time there that they're growing. Over the other side is a yellow tulip. A lot of our flowers that bloom in early spring are bulbs because the bulb is protected down in the ground. All right, so what does a growing plant need to be able to grow and be successful? If you look at our example of the plant, let's start down at the roots. The roots, again, are collecting water. Water we call H2O. That's the way scientists like to do water. And now the stem of that plant is reaching up. Again, those leaves are collecting all that sunlight so they can make food. They can photosynthesize. Now, at the same time, the plant is breathing out oxygen and it's breathing in carbon dioxide. If you guys take a big, deep breath right now, take a big, deep breath. A lot of what your body needs is that oxygen. And when you blow out, you're blowing out carbon dioxide. So you see why we're good friends with all our plants. We need each other. Now the plant needs, again, water, light, good soil, nutrients that are in the soil, carbon dioxide. Now, most plants need soil. There are some that don't need soil that can grow in water. You may have heard of hydroponics. So that is a way of growing all of our plants down in water without a dirt medium. But we're going to be using some soil to grow ours. Now, if you look at the soil that's here, soil is organic matter, like plants or wood, rocks, and plus the rocks. So as those rocks and that organic matter breaks down, that's what gives the soil the nutrients. Okay, now there are different kinds of soil, but the soil is important because that's where the plant gets all of its nutrients, like its vitamins. So if you look at this bottom picture, you see the very beginning, first little plant. It's been focused on growing its root. It's just now starting to get its first two leaves out. Those first two leaves we call cotyledons. Now, look at the second picture, the second plant that's growing. See, it's got lots of fibrous roots down there collecting all the water, and it's able to get its leaves. Now, once it finally has its leaves out, it's able to start photosynthesizing, grabbing that sunlight to make its food, and then it really starts to take off growing. So if you look at the picture at the top, again, this is a time lapse over several days, but you see how the plant is able to grow. So again, we're going to be looking at these patterns of growth. Do they all do the same thing at the same time? Do they grow the same way? What's the first to come out? All of these are things that you're going to be observing. Now, one of the activities you're going to be doing with some of your parents, with the parent docents, is also looking at soil. And the soil is alive with water and air. If you look at that first picture, most people look down at the dirt and you think that soil, it's made of minerals, organic matter, things that used to be alive, water, and air. So to be able to have little pockets of air where air or water could take up that space is very important. If you look at the picture on the right, if we didn't have room for the air and the organic matter and the water, we wouldn't have any living animals in that. It would just be too compacted. It'd be too dry and rocky and just smushed down. It wouldn't be any good. So hopefully in our garden, we're going to have some nice healthy soil and we're going to get lots of different animals. So anytime we see worms and ants, those are fantastic to have in your garden. They help with pollination, the ants do, but they also tunnel down into the ground. Can you find a couple of those worms in this picture? I'll use my little red pointer again. These two worms, see, they're going from the surface down into the ground. So again, the worms are helping to create new little channels where water and air can go through. Look at this worm over here. Look at all the channels it's made. So these animals are very important because they help our soil become healthy. All right, the soil layers. Look at this excavator over there. It takes a big machine to be able to pull up this compacted, hard, dry dirt. It's almost like a concrete there. Is that a place where that you could get a plant to grow? Would you like to plant a butterfly garden there? It wouldn't grow, would it? It's too compacted. So again, we've got to make it healthy again. If you look at our soil layers there, by the trees and the flowers and the mushrooms, first layers where those roots are, those humus. And then the topsoil, some of our roots do reach down into our topsoil and our subsoil. But then down below, you get fragmented rocks and then bedrock. So again, school grounds tend to be like the picture on the right where the excavator are. That ground has been trampled on and driven on, and it's had a hard time. It's been real compacted. So we might have our work cut out for us to make our soil healthy. Now, our plants do get their nutrients from the soil, and they get it from breaking down these rocks and little critters. So if you look at my picture over to the right, the sun shines shining on both of these plants, but one is healthy, one is not. The big difference here is what's going on in the soil. So this would be that soil that excavator was, like it's real compacted and dry. There's no vitamins and minerals, no nutrients to be able to get sucked up by this plant. But over here, so these are some of the chemical names you may recognize. Sulfur, Ca is calcium, Mg, magnesium, Si is silicon, K is potassium. So you've got all these, did I say that right? Yeah, potassium and nitrogen and phosphorus. So you've got all these nutrients that are actually in the soil from the rocks and the organic matter that are going to give this plant life. All right, now, if you look over on this side, a lot of times when you're working in gardens, you may see some soil or fertilizer, and you'll see these big 3 letters, N for nitrogen, P for potassium, K, oh, I said that wrong, phosphorus, P is phosphorus, K is potassium. So these 3 minerals are very important. The nitrogen helps with good leaf growth. The phosphorus, healthy root growth. And then the K, the potassium, is just general growth overall. So these are very important to a plant. Just like people, we need our vitamins. We need some of these same vitamins sometimes in our foods that we eat. And so again, we get our energy from our food. Plant also gets the energy then from the soil. Now, different environments influence plants differently. So if we look way down on the ground and we're to use a microscope to start looking at what happens, we're looking at small little pieces. And see, down along this area of this root, we've got this little spore that's able to interact. It touches the plant, and then it starts kind of growing there. We've also got our nutrients and our water. So look at this picture over here. Look at how these roots, these tiny little roots, are growing because it's the right environment. There's enough soil, enough nutrients, enough water. At least that's to get the plant started. All right, so how do our animals and our plants work together? Have you ever thought about it? Next time you go out into the playground, do you have any plants around your schoolyard? What kind of animals do you think would be around? When you go home, do you've got any plants or around your house? And what kind of animals do you think would be there? We're talking even some of these tiny, small animals, like our ants and our roly-polies and our butterflies. So if we look at this picture, this is a beautiful monarch butterfly. This is our goal in planting the milkweed, that we might get some of these monarchs around. So you can see this little video going. Now this monarch is sitting on this plant, these flowers, so that it can use its long tongue. Its proboscis works like a straw. It can roll out its tongue and it can suck up all of the nectar that's in this plant. So our adult butterflies, they do need the nectar. You hear all the ducks in the background? This is over at Tyson's Lagoon, at Tully Ponds at Tyson's Lagoon. So we have an acre lake, a couple acres of the lake there, and then there's water plants all around. Now, isn't that butterfly amazing? The colors are fantastic. All right, so again, our plants, flowering plants, these angiosperms, they have to create more seeds in order to keep growing. And pollen is the part that's needed from two different plants to make those seeds. Remember, plants can't walk around. And remember that plants do need pollinators like this butterfly to be able to reproduce. All right, pollination. Can you guys say pollination? Pollination. It's a special relationship between a plant and a pollinator. Pollinators would be things like bees, wasps, bats, hummingbirds. So lots of different kinds of pollinators. And it's when it's beneficial to both plant and animal. Doesn't hurt the animal or the plant. They both need to exist. Now, our animals like to go to these plants because they get food. So remember, our butterfly was getting the nectar. Look at this little butterfly the bee on the pink flower. Look at him running. He's moving all those parts of the flower around. What is he doing? He might be licking up some of the nectar, but he's also collecting pollen. Now look at the bee at the very bottom of the page over here. Now this little bee is covered in pollen. That's the stuff that the trees and the plants make to make their new seeds. Now look at this bee. You guys see right here on his leg? You see that little yellow pouch? That is a pollen pocket. It's like you guys have pockets in your clothes sometimes. The bee has pockets on his leg. So when he goes to a flower, he finds some pollen, he sticks it down in his pocket. And then he's able to take it back to the hive. But look at all the pollen. He's got it all over him. So he might have to spend some cleanup time cleaning up his antennas and all. But you see where just he landed on this leaf. Look at the pollen that dropped off of him. That's how easy it is for our pollinators to spread the pollen around. Now for this bee, for example, it's going to take this pollen back to its hive, and it's going to pack all of that pollen down into these little circles that they've made, or octagonals that they've made, and they will use that to store and eventually becomes honey, but it's food for the rest of the hive. Now, this is a funny picture because it's a bunch of different animals that are all flying around, but these are all pollinators. Remember, I talked about hummingbirds? So let's look at this hummingbird right here over in the purple flower. A hummingbird has a very long, skinny beak with a long tongue, so it can look way down here to get that nectar. Look at this butterfly here. Again, it's probing its proboscis, sticking that straw tongue down deep in those flowers to get the nectar. Now this bee here, he might be getting some nectar, but he's focused on the pollen. Same thing with this one. This butterfly over here, oh, look, you can see his proboscis right above my red. You can see his proboscis sticking into the flowers to get the nectar. All right, so again, for these flowers to attract all these pollinators, the flowers have to look a certain way. They have to kind of make themselves pretty, look attractive. They're only certain colors because these animals that are our pollinators can see certain colors and they become very, very bright to those animals. So again, flowers have to look a certain way. Nectar is from the plants that attract the pollinators, and the pollen moves with the pollinator. So it's going to move with the bee or the butterfly and the hummingbird. All right, so pollen. What is pollen? If we took a microscope and we could look at pollen, the left side over here, this is what pollen looks like under a microscope. See, it's kind of spiky. It almost kind of looks like some of our viruses and all too that we have. But these are little tiny pieces of pollen. Now, the pollen again comes from the plant. So if you look at this picture over here on the right, when this plant is first growing its flowers, see how they were all closed up? And then they start to open up so that all this pollen now is exposed. See, again, they were all covered up at first, growing the pollen. And now the pollen is out, ready for those pollinators to come through. All right, so a little closer look at what is pollen. Look at that picture down here. Did you guys see that? Okay, what? There's a guy down at the bottom. He's shaking the tree. All that stuff coming off is pollen. Remember that picture? These little things right here? All of that is pollen. Look at that. I sure hope he's not allergic to cedar pollen. If you're allergic to the pollen, it makes you sneeze and it makes your eyes water. All right, so when all that pollen lands on the ground, that's all this yellow. You see all the yellow down here on this driveway? And they're having to wash it off. So in the springtime, that's usually when a lot of the pollen is released and everything kind of has a yellow coloring on it. So again, that's our pollen. And again, you will do a couple activities too with some parent docents while looking at the parts of a flower. And if you look at what happens on this lower picture here, as soon as there we go. Let's see if the pollen comes in. There we go, and it goes all the way down the tube. And now that flower is going to turn into something that's going to hold seeds. So if it was that yellow flower, it would turn into a tomato or a zucchini, something like that. All right. Now, you are going to eventually create a pollinator garden. So you're going to create a whole garden area that's going to attract as many plants and as many animals as you can with all the different types of plants. If you look at this picture on the right over here, all the different colors, yellow, red, purple, white. You see all these different colors, different types of plants, different sizes. Some are tall, some are small, but that way that gets a lot of diversity. If we have a lot of different kinds of plants, guess what? We get a lot of different kinds of animals. So that's kind of cool. Now, if you look at this big field over here on the left, look at all these purple flowers. So this is a field that's growing these for cut flowers. So you can cut them and put them in a vase and put them in your house. You guys see right here and right here? What are those? Those are some monarch butterflies. Now, again, all the different plants. So we're planting a lot of milkweed because we know the monarchs do like the milkweed. But we're going to eventually plant, again, a pollinator garden that has many different types of plants. So when we're talking about all of these, remember, we're talking about the pollinators is very helpful for getting that flower to be able to go to seed. So if you look at that big giant sunflower, oh, I just saw some ladybugs there too. Now, once that flower is pollinated, all those little pieces in the middle, those turn into sunflower seeds that you can dry and eat. A lot of people grow these and we have them in our garden and we just leave them there because the birds and the squirrels come to eat those seeds. We just let them dry. Or you can harvest them and collect the sunflower seeds to eat yourself. All this wouldn't be possible unless we had our little pollinators. Now, again, you look at that little bee. What's he got on his little legs? He's got his pollen pockets. Okay, remember, he's going there collecting all the pollen he can. He's sticking them down in his little pockets, and then he takes it back. All right, so again, as long as we have extra water too, space to grow, nutrients in the soil, then we're going to have a successful plant. All right. Now, once we have all these plants that are growing and you've got seeds that are developing, there's different ways that plants kind of hold their seeds together and different ways that those plants can then be dispersed or moved out. You guys know this one up here, this top left one. You guys recognize that one? It's fun to pick and then you blow them all off. That is wind dispersal. Wind dispersal. And it was before it was a flower or before it came to seed, it was a flower. Do you remember what color that one was? It was a yellow dandelion, that became these seeds. Oh, look at the bottom, look right underneath it. This is a plant that likes to have its roots drill down into the soil. Look at that, how the whole thing is getting pulled back down into the soil. And look at the top where the bird is. So the bird eats a seed, then what happens? It sits on its branch and it poops. Now, what happens to that seed after it's gone through the bird and it's deposited in the poop? The bird's belly, the stomach acid, takes off the seed coat that protects the seed. So once it's pooped out, then it's ready to grow. And it's got its own fertilizer and all there with it as well. That's pretty cool. Now, the bottom one on the right here, this is pressure. There's some plants that build up a lot of pressure in their seed pods. This one, you just barely touch it and the whole thing pops open. We'll probably plant some California poppies, and those California poppies do the same thing. They build up so much pressure, you can actually hear them. That's how they got their name. All right, now if you look at the one in the middle, the one in the middle is our milkweed. And our milkweed seeds kind of look like those of the wind dispersal, just like the dandelion. So the seeds aren't quite ready yet. That little seed pod is going to open up. And once it's open wide enough, then all those seed pods, their seeds are going to be blown away, just like our dandelion. All right, now this is kind of a funny video. This is all about planting a seed and watching it grow. Is this really how it works? So we got Linus and Snoopy and Woodstock just throwing seeds out, and then they water them. Woodstock's having a hard time watering. And then already they've got fruits and vegetables to eat. Does it grow that fast? No. Remember, it takes several weeks, couple months usually, to get be able to harvest some. So again, it takes a lot of hard work. This little clip makes it look like it's really easy, but it's not that hard. The soil has to be prepared. You see that's kind of done in rows. Watering is very important. We have to make sure then that once they're planted, that other weeds don't take over, because sometimes those weeds can take over and grow too fast. So we'll have to learn what's the plants that we planted and what's weed. All right, now you're going to be doing a lot of observing. Okay, so look at this clip here and observe, how does a seed grow? What is the first thing that moves? Oh, you got some roots. So down here, these were the kind of the first roots to come up, but they all have a root that goes pretty deep, even before the leaves start coming out. Remember those first two leaves we call the cotyledons? So they're coming up. Oh, now once they reach all the way out of the soil, then they kind of all catch up and seem to be about the same height once they start photosynthesizing. So the leaves grow up, roots grow down. Now here is another picture. We're going to see what happens in this video, how it's moving, how it's growing. Oh, look way down here. You see these roots? Way down here, they've got roots growing. Okay, now they're able to get their stems growing, got more leaves, they're photosynthesizing. So one thing you're going to be doing is observing your plants too, and you're going to be able to measure them, put a number to it. Also other observations like how many leaves it has. Oh, like this one starting, oh, it's so tall it fell over. Now, is it going to keep growing? Yes, look at this one, just added 2 more leaves. Look, it does, it keeps growing up. Now, the plants that we've selected, the milkweed, are going to grow pretty straight. So hopefully we don't have any falling over. Now, look, it's still growing. This is showing you the top since it's up out of the field of view. But you see how it just keeps putting on more and more stem and more leaves. Now, this one, looking at this one, remember that seeds grow into plants. So again, we've got our roots that are growing down, our stems and our leaves are growing up. Now you'll see some of them, they have that little seed coat that kind of protects that seed. They have to get rid of that seed coat. So they're ready to do that if there's enough water and again, nutrients in the soil. Remember the seed that the bird ate? That takes that seed coat off. So when it hits the ground, then it's ready to put down roots. All right, so again, they reproduce and make new seeds, which creates then new plants. All right, so the plant you're going to be working with is called milkweed. Can you guys say milkweed? Okay. It is the host plant for monarch butterflies and nectar for other pollinators. So if you look at the picture way over here at the top, where my red cursor is. You see that white sappy stuff? If you break a stem or pull a leaf off of a milkweed plant, this white milky latex comes out. Now, it doesn't hurt us, but that white milky latex doesn't taste good to a lot of animals. But the caterpillars, the monarch caterpillar, if they eat this, they thrive. It makes them taste bad for other birds. So that's a pretty good way to not get eaten, right? Be for lunch, is if you taste bad. So our milkweed does play a very important role. This is a type of milkweed called a showy milkweed, has real big leaves. This one over here with the purple and the red and the yellow and the orange, that's a tropical milkweed. And we've also got a narrow leaf milkweed. Now on this narrow leaf milkweed, you'll see there's right here, there's a milkweed beetle. So let me play this for you.
This is the narrow leaf milkweed, and you can see the petals are pointing up and down, allowing for maximum use by the beetles and any other animal that would be feeding on the pollen or the nectar.
So that's pretty cool. Look at those flowers. Nature made that. Look at how the parts of the petals go up and other petals go down. That's pretty amazing. So you may grow your milkweed and even get to attract some of these milkweed beetles. They're not going to hurt you. You can hold them. They're, again, busy feeding off of aphids and all that are on our milkweed plants. Okay, so here's our monarchs and our milkweed. Again, looking at this monarch butterfly, coloring is what's unique. You see the two big antennae. And the butterflies tend to rest with their wings up during the day. Moths rest during the day with their wings out flat. All right, so I think Dr. Joyce has a little something to tell us about this butterfly.
This is a male monarch. You can see that it has these dots. You can see they have a little relief to them. Those are where they have pheromones to attract the female. So this is a male.
All right, and again, during the day, it's going to rest when it has its wings folded up like that. All right, so butterflies fly during the day. Moths tend to fly at night. But with this monarch butterfly, again, because it's around the milkweed as a caterpillar and all, it doesn't taste good to birds either. So again, pretty good trick from using the milkweed. Now, if you look right over here, you see this color pattern. Look at this color pattern. Look at these two big antennae there. Two big antennas there. And look at their little Velcro leggies there. This is a caterpillar for the monarch. It does have 6 true legs. These are just kind of little Velcro legs. But look at this coloring. So that coloring tells a bird, you don't taste good. I'm not good on the menu. Okay, so get to know those colors. Because again, we're planting our milkweed in hopes of attracting our butterflies. Our butterflies are going to lay eggs underneath on the leaf side, underneath side of the leaf. And then you tend to just lay one little egg at a time. And that egg's going to hatch out, be a little caterpillar. Guess what? It's laying on the milkweed. It's already got its food ready for it. And it'll eat and eat and eat until it's large enough to be able to become, do its chrysalis thing. All right. So again, butterflies as adults, they will use the nectar of the plant. Okay. And our caterpillar can only grow if it's on this milkweed, not any other kind of plants. That's why we call it a host plant. All right. Your first experiment. The first thing you're going to do is look at some of the plant models that we have. Somewhere there at Mattos, we've got these little plant models. There's a box of them, and I can help you find them. I think we've got them together. And you'll need some rulers. So first thing you can do is just practice measuring everything. Practice measuring everything. And then when you look at these models, you're going to figure out, put them in the order, like what's the first thing that happens, what's the last thing that happens. And then you're going to use your ruler, just like we have it behind here. You put it behind the plant, and then you're going to record. Here's the part where you get to record. You can draw a picture of the plant, and then you're going to measure and record the height. Okay, so here's the bean. This is the bean. Does that have any height? Not yet, because we're only measuring from the ground. Once it starts popping out of the ground, then that's what we're going to measure. All right. And you've got a sheet that you're going to put information on. Okay. And we're going to keep track of all this stuff in our little booklet. All right. So again, the plants that you're going to use are called this balloon milkweed. And to get ready for our growth experiment, we've got a few plants. I don't know that we're going to bring them all the way over until we figure out all of our water there. But I'll get to that in just a second. So this is a little bit about the balloon milkweed.
We're now looking at a balloon milkweed. Notice that Art is holding them and it looks like hairy structures. Is this hard or is that like a balloon? Art, let's squeeze it. Whoa, what's inside of it?
Now, before, remember, we saw the seeds.
Great.
When they're ready, they pop open on their own. And again, those dried seeds start to blow around. So this milkweed plant grows pretty straight. So I hope it's going to be easy for us to measure. All right. So part of what we're going to do is transplant a small little milkweed that's already been growing into a 5-gallon container. And we're going to watch Art do this, but this is also what you are going to be doing because it's kind of showing you how to do it.
Art will be transplanting a African or balloon milkweed.
Oh, hold on. Let me do it again.
Art will be
There we go.
transplanting a African or balloon milkweed. First, he has to dig a hole in the 5-gallon container, which will be the home of the milkweed for about 3 months. Okay, so as he's digging the hole, notice how he has to make it pretty large to get that plant in there. So then as he gets the hole bigger, and he could do that as we go along, he's going to pick up the milkweed. And I'm going to go back so you can see the milkweed. And notice he's got it in a little container, a 4x4 container. Notice how he's squeezing. He wants to be real gentle with the roots. So then he'll do it over the hole that he made and try to get it all in there. Sometimes you can't, so you have to use your hands or the trowel and try to take it out. And like I said, be real careful with the roots. Now it's popping out. And then he'll be putting it in. There he goes. Okay, then we'll put it in the hole. And then we'll use your hands to push it down. You want to make sure it has a good home and the roots are set. And then what's the last thing that you would do here is that you would have to give it a little water. Because remember, plants need soil and water in order to grow. Then you'll be all ready to start measuring it. Now make sure that you don't put too much water, make it go slow, and then it's ready for you to measure.
All right, so notice he kind of put the water around the edges. He didn't have it on super hard either. If you had water on super hard, a lot of water coming out at once, it would kind of just bowl your little plant right over, right? It would take it out of its planting. Now this little picture up here is just showing you exactly how Art took the plant out when it was transporting. See how you do your fingers around the stem? So that way it doesn't get squished. Okay, so we have this milkweed that's already been growing. I think once we figure out how the water situation out there, we will bring those out and you guys can get started, or they may already be there. I'll have to check. But we have water in your garden that's supposed to be coming on. Now, over the summer, your principal did a fantastic job. She cleaned up the garden and planted some plants, but then something went wrong with the water. So what do you think happened to all the plants? Died. Our new plants that we put in had died. So we have to get the water figured out, and then we will be able to get going on this. Now, all of you are going to have a booklet. This is going to be your little student booklet for you to collect data on the growing milkweed plant. Now, with this booklet, second grade plant growth. So if we leave this out somewhere, it gets forgotten. Look, it's got your name and the teacher's name. So somebody knows whose box to put it back into to get it back to you, okay? One thing that's real important is the plant number. Now you will be working in pairs. So you'll be working with a partner, and your teacher's going to give you a plant number. Okay, they're going to have numbers already on them. That's the ones that you're going to track. Now, again, you're going to be assigned that milkweed to see how it grows. Each kid, each one of you are going to keep your own information. And that's because everybody sees things a little different. Okay, so that way you can record all of your observations. Now we're going to record the height, other things like the number of leaves, if we see any bugs, if it got knocked over, things like that. But we're going to take all of our data, our height numbers, and we're going to plot it on a graph. And over time, we're going to see if that plant grows. All right, so when you open up your booklet, you will have these little sheets. Again, everyone needs to record this information each time you guys go out and measure. I think we should have at least 10 or 12 measurements if we did like once a week or so, but we need to have as many measurements as we can. So if you find that it's easy to get out there and measure yours, then do it. All right, so again, we're putting the number of plant number, student's name, so you'd have your name and a partner. Then we're putting the date, is very important, plant height, and we're measuring in centimeters. So that's the metric scale. Now that's measurements that we have a number to, they're quantitative. We can put a number to it. That's what we're going to graph. Other observations or questions are for you to write down. So again, you could write how many leaves it has, if you saw any other bugs, if it needs more water, or something else is crowding it, or it's not getting enough sun, things like that you can write down. The very bottom is for you to become an artist, and you get to draw what it looks like today. Okay, and we're seeing again how many leaves it has. So some of you may like to write more things, but some of you may like to draw more things. Again, everybody is different. All right, so when we are measuring the plant, remember that one picture when it was growing and it fell over? Hopefully, we will be able to measure these fairly easily. And again, we're going to start by always putting the ruler, these red lines are like my ruler. The ruler is going to be right at the surface of the ground, the soil. Do you want to take that and push it down into the soil? No, we want it to be right at the surface. Okay, and again, we're looking at the tallest part then of that plant. See, that might be right there. This one's going to be right here. And the tallest part of this plant right there. So again, you can put your ruler right behind it. Now, we again are going to be using centimeters because science, we use the metric system. So we always measure in the centimeters. You don't need to convert anything. You just measure one way or the other. So if you look at the inches, you go all the way to an inch. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 increments to make an inch. Now, if you look over here at the centimeters, this is like your 0 line. Let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this big longer line there is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Makes the 1 millimeter, no, 1 centimeter. So 10 millimeters equals the 1 centimeter. So here's our trick. Metric is so much easier to use. If I had my plant to right here, that would be 1.5. So look, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's my simple measurement. So that's, again, the first thing we're going to do is just practice measuring all different kinds of things in centimeters. You're going to measure those little plants as practice. Then we'll get to measuring our big plants. All right, another trick that you might find helpful when you're collecting your height data, sometimes it's hard to figure out where the tallest plant is. So in this, we just used a pipe cleaner, and we just kind of wrapped it around, kind of made it flat. So that way it was easier for, like, one kid could kind of find where the tallest was, and then the other one could kind of measure and hold it, and the other person could look and see what the measurement was. So see, that's a little bit easier. Now you guys can decide as a class and teachers what you want your measurements to be, how exact. The more exact, of course, the better. But look at this one. This one is close to 16. There's 17, 16 is hiding right there. So that's up to you. Would you call this 16 or would you call it 17? Or you could call it 16.2. That's up to you guys to try to figure out what you want to record. And again, you're going to draw a picture. Any observations? So now we're keeping track of all our data. This is the important part. On your booklet, on the very back page, you have this graph or this thing I got you right in front that has the plant number, the date, and the height. So let's say I've just gone outside and I've measured my first time. Then I want to come onto the back and put my number right here. Okay, so each time you measure, you're going to fill out a new sheet and then also record it on the back here. And this is just going to be an easier way to make a graph, because towards the end of the year, we're going to be making graphs. You guys ever worked with graphs before? Okay. A graph, not a giraffe, but a graph. A graph is just a way of plotting data, and it's easier to kind of see what's happening. So on one side of the graph, the graph, this is the X. So this down here, we've got the times that we went out to measure. This side, we have the height in centimeters of the plant. So you see each one of these little dots down here is where I have recorded some of my growth. Now look what happens because I'm on plant number 20 and I've chosen green. So every plant group, every number can have a different color. This is what my graph ended up looking like. Do you think my plant grew pretty well? Kind of looks like it kept growing each week until it finally got to be 33 centimeters high. I think that did pretty well. So again, that's just a way, again, of plotting all that data and kind of looking at it, and we can make guesses as to what happened. It's just an easier way to look at it. So if I had these 3 plants, week 1, week 2, week 3, each week they got a little bit taller. If I graphed those heights, I would get a red line that would go like this. It's going up, which means the plants are growing. They're doing well. They're growing. Now, if I measured my plants week 1, week 2, week 3 like this, they're still alive. They're still growing. But did they grow in any height? No. See how my line is flat? Yeah. So they're alive. They're just not gaining height. Oh, no. What happened here to my peace lily? It needed water. It may have already died, but look what happens if I measured, this was the week before, and I go out and I measured today. Oh no. So this line going down means my plant wasn't growing. It lost all of its height. So this could mean that the plant just needs water. It could be that the plant got broken or stepped on or something. It could be maybe measurement, like maybe you're holding the wrong way or backwards or upside down or something. So again, a graph is just a way to give you more information. Now, if you look at this, the measurements on this graph, which line shows you no growth? No growth. It didn't grow at all. The B, the one in the middle, remember it's kind of flat. So again, a graph is just a way of gathering up. All right, now this slide is just in case. We have to figure out the water. If we're going to have an issue with the water, the easiest thing that I've always done is just have my kids water. I get a bunch of these just old plastic bottles, recycled bottles, and I put holes right around the, I usually put holes like right around here at the top, or you can put holes in the actual top. And that way everyone gets a chance to water their plants. And it's easy enough if you're on your way out to recess or to PE something, just grab those bottles and dump them out. You can water your own plant. So hopefully though, we will get that figured out. If we have permanent water there, or if you guys need to water, we'll let you know. All right, so for your long-term experiment with your teacher, you are going to be measuring the milkweed plant growth for 7 months, and you're going to collect all the data. You're going to look for patterns of growth. And you're going to be planting these plants in your pollinator garden and create a bigger pollinator garden. You're also going to engage in 6 lessons with the parent docents. And some of these parent docents, teachers, they're also available to help you if you need help doing these long-term projects too. All right, so some of the things you're going to get out of it. You're going to have a great time. You're going to have fun. You're going to be using your observation skills. You're going to be working together. with friends, and you might make new friends with the people you work with. You're going to be using your math skills, your measuring and your graphing, your writing skills. You're going to get great at all those letters. You're going to be an artist where you can draw your picture and what you see. Did I say we're going to have fun? Yeah, we're going to have fun. We're going to be outside around the garden, and we're going to be inside doing some of the work. We're going to get your hands dirty, your hands get in the dirt when you're planting. We're going to use all kinds of scientific equipment. Things like hand lenses, all kinds of stuff. We're going to be planting the plants. We're going to be planning a garden. We're going to come up with all kinds of fantastic ideas. You're going to discover new things. And we're going to explore the things that we see, that we hear, we feel. You're going to have a great experience. So I hope you guys will all have fun doing it. At the end of this long term, teachers, we are going to put up a big grid that'll have maybe all of your classes on there. We'll be able to, parents can walk down, we can see all the work, we can look at our books, and we can see all the data that we've collected and the information you observed, and it's going to be great. All right, so again, I'll be around to help if we need it. Let me see if I can get us out of here now.